Support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month to enjoy ad-free videos, exclusive content, your name at the end of each video, as well as the chance to have your idea for a Name Explain video made into reality. Go to patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below. The transcontinental nation of Georgia lies within both Eastern Europe and Western Asia in the Caucasus region of the world. It's just under 27,000 square miles in size and has a population of just over 4 million. It's the birthplace of wine, with the oldest evidence of its production being found in the land. The deepest cave in the world can also be found in Georgia too. And famous people from the country include the likes of actor Elena Satin, chess grandmaster Zurab Amaspalashvili, and a guy named Joseph Stalin who you may have heard of before. Georgia is far from the most well-known of country on the world stage, but from all accounts it seems like a pretty remarkable one. The name Georgia is fairly common for this country in other languages, albeit they have their own spin on it. In German it is called Georgen, while in French it is called Georgie. Even in Japanese it is called Georgia. This name or variations of it are commonplace across the globe, though where you won't find a version of this name is within Georgia itself. In the land's native tongue of Georgian, the nation is instead called Sakartvelo. This name even extends to the native names of the people of the land and their language. The name for its residents in English are Georgians, while in the country they refer to themselves as Kartveli, and they call their language of Georgian Kartuli. This is a very unique language as it's not of Indo-European roots or even Afro-Asiatic roots like many of the other languages spoken around it. The language is instead the most widely spoken member of the Kartvelian language family, which houses much smaller languages like Maz, Mingrelian, and Svan. This family even has its own unique scripture that consists of 3 different writing systems. But suffice to say, the names of Georgia and Sakartvelo sound nothing alike. This is another prime example of a nation's endonym and its English exonym not matching up at all, like we see with Germany and Deutschland, Finland and Suomi, and the many others we've covered on this channel over the years. Seriously, how have we not done this one yet? It must have slipped under my radar or something. Between these two names, Sakartvelo is definitely the older of the two. The earliest evidence we have of the name comes from the 8th century. It has ties with the name of the locals. As mentioned, they refer to themselves as the Kartveli. We don't seem to be entirely sure as to where the name for these people came from, but the popular myth is that they are descendants of Katlos, a figure in Christianity who is seen as the founder of these people. He was also the great-great-grandson of Noah, you know, the guy of the ark. However their name came about, it can be seen in that name of Sakartvelo, though it's not a perfect one-to-one. In the country's name, the letters of S and A are added to the start of it, and the I at the end of Kartveli is instead changed to an O. These changes came about due to how words are formed in Georgian. The S, A, and O are their way of changing the name of a people into the name of a location, kind of like the ear, land, or stan suffixes in other languages. This means that the name Sakartvelo more or less simply means the land of the Kartveli. The name Sakartvelo was initially used to refer to the more central region of the modern nation, where the Kartveli initially originated from. Over time, as the Kartveli became the dominant group in the land, and their land and influence expanded, it came to refer to the wider region as a whole, before settling as the name of the nation today. So despite how exotic the name Sakartvelo might seem initially to English speakers, in reality it's a fairly basic name that derives from the tried and tested formula of using a people's name as a place name with an affix. Perhaps in an alternative timeline, outside people interacted more with the Kartveli and named the land after them too, with their own place name forming suffixes. Maybe it could have become known as Kartvelia or Kartveliland or even Kartvelistan, though this of course did not happen. Instead, tongues around the globe settled on the name Georgia for this country, or at least a variation of that name in their respective languages. Our earliest evidence for this name in any form dates back to just 1320, and I say 1320 like that was yesterday, but relative to the name Sakartvelo, which came about in the 8th century, it seems pretty new. This 1320 appearance of the name can be found on a world map created by Italian cartographer Pietro Visconti. Now, you must remember at this time we didn't have a full grasp of what the world really looked like. Wider European knowledge of the Americas was still a few centuries away. Even Africa and Asia hadn't been fully uncovered yet by European map makers. I preface this so much because the map he made in 1320 looked like this. I'm sure this map was pretty good for its time, and I'm not discrediting Visconti's abilities as a map maker, but with our understanding of the world today, this map more looks like something you'd find at the start of a fantasy book or something. Supposedly Georgia is on here somewhere, but I've spent way too much time looking through it, and I don't have the time to fully track it down. If anyone can pinpoint it, please let me know down below. Supposedly on this map, the land is labelled not as Georgia, but instead by its older Italian name of Giorgia. This might seem odd to us now, but G and J have been interchangeable throughout history. Despite only receiving this name in the 14th century, the land has been known of by Europeans for centuries prior. In fact, during the time of ancient Rome when the land was under their rule, they gave it the name of Iberia. This is super odd, as Iberia is also the name for the peninsula in southwest Europe, which houses Spain, Portugal, and some other smaller nations and areas too. Why did the Romans use this name for two different parts of the world? Beats me. Honestly, that could be a video for another time. But of course, the name Iberia was ditched for this land, and it became known as Georgia in Old Italian, which spread across Europe and other nations before becoming Georgia in English. We have a few theories as to where this name originates from. It's thought to ultimately not actually come from any European language, but instead from Persian roots. In Persian, this land and its people were simply known as Gurgun and Gurg respectively. There are two leading theories on what this name could mean. The duller answer is that it means the tillers of the land. This relates to the unique way of farming that the natives did here. This farming clearly confused ancient Persian speakers enough to warrant naming the people and the land after this fact. The second theory is a lot more exciting and has the name meaning the land of the wolves. This probably stems from the fact that wolves can be found in this country. Today, there are thought to just be a few thousand left here, but we can imagine in the past they were much more abundant. Wolves are pretty cool animals, often linked with might and ferocity. I can imagine many people in the land like this etymology better, as being linked with wolves and being the land of them is just pretty rad. The name might not relate to wolves as a whole, but instead just one mythological creature called the Gurg, which supposedly had the head of a wolf. No idea what the rest of its body looked like though. Whatever Gurgun truly means is a mystery, but we have a pretty good understanding as how this Persian name became Georgian in English, and versions of that name across Europe. It's believed that Gurgun became Georgia via Christian missionaries and explorers who went to this land. Those from Western Europe would have heard this name for the country and brought tales of the land back westward with them. By the 14th century, Georgia was already a very Christian country. In fact, it is still incredibly Christian to this very day. Georgia was one of the first nations to adopt Christianity as their official language, happening in 319 AD, even before Rome had adopted it. And for those wondering, nearby Armenia is seen as being the first to actually adopt it back in 301. As these European Christian missionaries knew the land was Christian, and most likely had the religion on the brain themselves, they supposedly mistook the name of Gurgun as an ode to one St. George. St. George is a big deal in Christianity. He is being considered the saint of many countries, including England where he supposedly killed a big dragon. He has since become linked with Georgia too. It's why the flags of England and Georgia are fairly alike. Once again, we don't actually know if Gurgun is really an ode to St. George, but this was the idea that European explorers liked most, so when they went back to places like Italy and England, it was this etymology they took back with them, which cemented the land with being somewhere deeply linked with St. George and gave them the name of Georgia, which has since been translated into many other languages around the world. One of the more notable translations of the name Georgia is Gluzia, the Russian version of the name, as well as versions of it being used in other Slavic languages. There's some debate whether this is the Slavic translation of Georgia or if the name came about by other means, but either way this name has become deeply linked with the nation. This is because the nations of Russia and Georgia have had very close ties throughout history. As mentioned up top, one of Russia's most well-known leaders came from the land. On top of this, Georgia throughout its history has been part of not only the Russian Empire, but also the USSR. As the country was under Russian influence for so long, it meant that the Russian name of Gluzia became known across the world too. The nation hasn't been part of Russia or the USSR since 1991 however, when they gained independence. Since this time, the government of Georgia has politely asked other nations to stop referring to it by this name, as they really do not want any ties with Russia anymore. But this all explains to us why this nation is called Georgia, or a variation of it in most parts of the world. But within the nation itself, it goes by that name of Sakartvelo. Its endonym is simply an ode to the natives of the land, while its exonym is potentially a misconstrued Persian ode to a Christian saint who fought a dragon one time. Yet in the same way the countries asked other nations to stop calling it Guluzia, maybe one day in the future it will ask all nations to stop calling it Georgia and instead ask everywhere to refer to it by its endonym of Sakartvelo. That's just me hypothesizing, but we have seen it recently with Turkey asking the world to call it Turkey, so who knows. At the very least, it would save a lot of us confusing it with a certain US state. Name Explained depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explained videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/NameExplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.